The desert gives no warnings. It simply collects what it's owed. The sun scorched the land of California in 1873, as if it meant to erase every trace of life. The wind lifted the dust in silent whirlwinds, and the road stretched on, empty, too long, too cruel. That was where Samuel Callahan saw something that should not have been there. At first, it looked like nothing more than a pile of cloth tossed at the edge of the trail, something common in a West that swallowed people without explanations. Samuel pulled on the reins, his chest tightening for reasons he couldn't name. Then the pile moved, a movement so slight it could have been imagined. A weak breath. Life. He dismounted slowly, steady hand, watchful eyes. It wasn't a wounded animal. It wasn't just another abandoned body. It was a woman, covered in dust, injured, struggling to breathe, each breath seeming like a choice. Her cracked lips tried to form words, but only a faint sound escaped. A plea or a farewell? Samuel knelt beside her. "Hey, listen to me," he said, his voice low, controlled. "Stay with me." She opened her eyes for a brief second, dark eyes full of fear, and something deeper, determination, as if she refused to die there. He should never have stopped, never should have gotten involved. In the West, helping someone was the first step toward digging your own grave. But Samuel Callahan had already lost too much to turn his back now. He lifted her carefully, placed her on the horse, and tied his own canteen to the saddle. As he mounted, a strange chill ran through him, the feeling that this simple moment was splitting his life in two. Behind them, the trail remained silent. Ahead, the danger had yet to show its face. And as they rode toward the horizon, Samuel still didn't know that this woman, Elena Morales, carried more than wounds on her body, but a secret powerful enough to set dangerous men in motion and turn mercy into pursuit. The desert had witnessed the meeting, known it would demand its price. The sun showed no mercy. Each step of the horse along the dry trail raised clouds of dust that clung to Samuel's face and to the wounded young woman riding with him. He tried to speak, but every word seemed to vanish into the hot, relentless wind. She remained silent, her eyes half closed, fixed on some invisible point ahead. Samuel realized it wasn't just about her injuries. There was fear there, deep, intense, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Hey," he began, his voice steady but gentle. "What's your name? Can you tell me?" She hesitated. A tremor ran through her arms and hands. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then her voice came out rough, heavy with pain. "Elena," she whispered, barely able to form the word. "Elena." "Right," Samuel said, repeating it to himself, trying not to show the unease creeping in. "What happened to you?" She took a deep breath, her eyes turning away, as if looking at him would force her to admit more than she was ready to tell. "No, they can't find me," she finally said, her voice shaking. "If they know I'm alive, you'll be in danger too." The chill that ran down Samuel's spine wasn't fear of an immediate attack. It was fear of the unknown. The West taught one thing clearly. When someone carries that much fear, it's because the danger is far greater than it appears. As they kept riding, the trail seemed to close in around them. Every rock, every cactus felt like it was hiding unseen eyes. Listening, Samuel sensed her past wouldn't stay buried for long, and that this simple act of helping her might change everything. Then, as if the desert itself wanted to prove him right, a sharp crack cut through the wind, followed by another. A shadow shifted behind a distant rock. Samuel raised his hand, signaling silence. His heart pounded, not only from fear for Elena, but from the growing certainty that their lives had just changed forever. She exhaled, barely catching her breath. And he understood that woman wasn't just fragile. She had strength, and a secret powerful enough to cost them both their lives. And in that scorching desert, with dust rising all around them, Samuel realized they were no longer alone. Someone was watching, and they were closing in. The trail seemed to stretch on forever, but the silence of the desert was too heavy to be just wind. Each step of the horse stirred the dust. Each breath from the wounded young woman echoed like a warning. Samuel glanced at her, trying to read what her eyes refused to tell. "Elena, are you well enough to talk?" he asked, his voice steady, trying not to reveal how deeply the entire scene unsettled him. She took a deep breath, but her lips trembled. It was as if she were fighting something invisible inside herself, and every word demanded effort. My past, she began, her voice low. I can't let them know where I am, not after what happened. Samuel felt a strange weight settle in his chest. He was used to facing the harshness of the West, but not stories that burned like this. Stories that demanded mercy and courage at the same time. Tell me what you can, he said, without pressure, but with resolve. I won't let them hurt you again. She closed her eyes for a moment, unseen memories passing through her mind. Samuel noticed how hard she struggled to stay upright, to keep from collapsing in the saddle beside him. Every scar, every wound seemed to carry more than physical pain. It carried betrayal, fear, and loneliness. I was falsely accused, she whispered. Everything happened too fast. People I trusted became enemies. They wanted to destroy me, and they almost did. Samuel clenched his fists. The West taught a man not to get involved, but something about Elena ignited a need to protect her, to not let her face that cruel world alone. Then, like a sharp snap on the horizon, something moved among the rocks. A shape, fast, precise, watching. Samuel stopped the horse, his eyes narrowing. Elena, someone is following us, he said quietly. She turned her face, eyes wide, but not surprised. There was recognition there, fear and resignation. I knew they would come. Sooner or later, she said. I just didn't expect it so soon. The wind carried that scent of danger again, dry and sharp. Samuel felt the adrenaline rise, and Elena held onto him, small and vulnerable, yet with a silent strength that defied any threat. Then we ride. He said, tightening the reins. And we keep them away. And in that instant, the West made one thing clear. There was no turning back. Each step forward meant risk, but also the chance to discover who they truly were, and what Elena was willing to fight to protect. But Samuel didn't know. The truth she carried was far more dangerous than he could imagine. And the figure following them, silent and relentless, would not miss the next move. The desert silence now felt like a trap. Each step of the horse kicked up dust that danced under the scorching sun. But it couldn't hide the truth. They were no longer alone. Samuel sensed the presence before he ever saw it. Unseen eyes watching them, calculating, waiting for the right moment. Elena, stay calm and hold on tight, he said, his voice steady, almost a whisper, as he tightened the reins. She nodded, breathing fast, wide eyes fixed ahead, alert to every shadow, every distant movement. Samuel realized she wasn't just afraid. She was ready to react if needed. There was courage there, even in a wounded body. Then suddenly, a sound cut through the wind. A snapping branch, subtle but enough. Samuel ducked, pulling Elena down with him, and saw them, two men emerging from the rocks, weapons drawn, movements fast and deliberate. "Stay behind me!" Samuel ordered, adrenaline burning through his veins. Elena took a deep breath, but didn't retreat completely. Fear was there, yes, but so was determination. She wouldn't let the past control her so easily. The men advanced, pistols gleaming under the sun. Samuel drew his own weapon, fingers steady, heart racing. He knew this ambush wasn't a coincidence. Someone wanted them off the path, or dead. Who are they? Elena whispered, almost inaudible, but Samuel had no time to answer. A gunshot rang out, sharp and terrifying. Samuel leaned the horse hard, pulling Elena down. The bullet struck a nearby rock, sending sparks and sand flying. Now the danger was real, imminent, deadly. As they retreated along the narrow trail, Samuel realized something that froze him from the inside. They knew Elena. This wasn't random. They knew exactly who she was, and what they wanted from her. "I won't let them take you," Samuel said, his voice firm, heavy with emotion. "I swear it." Elena looked at him, and for a brief moment their eyes met. There was trust there, but also a deep haunting fear. The young woman he had rescued was no longer just injured. She was a dangerous enigma, carrying secrets that could destroy anyone who got too close. And as they raced through the desert, the dust rising behind them concealed the silhouette of another pursuer, silent, calculating the next move. The West made one thing clear. They were at war now, and no one would walk away unscathed. The desert seemed endless, But the pursuit showed no mercy. Every rock, every cactus, every wave of hot wind passing between them carried a constant sense of danger. Samuel kept his eyes fixed on the horizon, yet never stopped watching Elena. She breathed with difficulty, her body still weak, but her expression was firm, defying every ounce of pain she carried. "Samuel," her voice came out low, almost breaking. I shouldn't have trusted anyone at all." He urged the horse forward, trying to balance speed with protection. "But you trusted me," he said firmly, "and I won't let them hurt you again." Elena looked away for a moment, painful memories flickering through her mind. She had grown up learning that the world spared no one, that betrayal could come from those who swore love or friendship. Every scar she carried held a silent story of loss, lies, and fear. "My brother," she began, her eyes filling with tears. But Samuel knew there was more beneath the fear. They hurt him for protecting me, and I couldn't do anything." Samuel swallowed hard. The desert forgave no weakness. Yet this woman, so small and wounded, carried a strength that burned quietly inside her. He realized it wasn't just about protecting her life. It was about protecting her dignity, her right to exist without fear. As they rode on, the narrow trail led them into a canyon, a perfect place for an ambush. Samuel knew it instantly. But there was no other way. Then a metallic sound echoed from behind a rock, a rifle being cocked. "Stay down!" he ordered, gripping Elena firmly. "They know exactly where we are." She nodded, but their eyes met for a brief instant. Something unspoken passed between them, an unexpected connection. Samuel felt it. Even in the chaos and danger, there was an invisible thread binding them together. A thread that said they needed each other, even if they couldn't admit it yet. The shadow of the pursuer reappeared, fast, precise. Samuel drew his weapon, aiming, and then froze. The enemy wasn't just anyone. It was someone who knew Elena, someone who knew where to strike, and how to wound her deeply. "They won't stop," Elena said, her voice steady, yet heavy with pain. "And the worst part is that not all the secrets they carry are on the surface." Samuel felt the truth in her words. The danger wasn't only physical, it was tied to her past, to a web of lies and betrayals that stretched far beyond anything he had imagined. And there, in the scorching canyon, with the wind cutting across their faces and dust rising all around them, Samuel realized something. That woman wasn't just someone to protect. She was the key to something greater, and perhaps the only reason he would keep fighting. The West did not forgive weakness. But in that moment, Samuel discovered that courage could be born where it was least expected. And the next ambush was closer than they imagined. The canyon swallowed the sunlight, turning every shadow into a possible enemy. Samuel felt the tension rise with every heartbeat. He kept Elena close, guiding the horse with steady hands, his eyes scanning every detail of the narrow trail. "Samuel, are they really coming after us?" Elena's voice came out low, almost a whisper, but heavy with restrained fear. "Yes," he answered, without taking his eyes off the path. "And they won't give up." The wind suddenly carried a sharp metallic crack. Samuel stopped the horse instantly, pressing Elena down as a spray of stones burst up when the first shot struck the ground nearby. They were surrounded. Two men emerged from the canyon's shadows, weapons raised, movements fast. Precise, Samuel reacted instinctively, firing first, but he realized with a chill that every step they took was calculated. This wasn't just a hunt. It was revenge, and they knew Elena. "Run!" Samuel shouted, pulling Elena to the side. The horse bolted forward, but the uneven ground nearly threw her off. Samuel held her tightly, feeling the heat of adrenaline surge through his body. In the middle of the chaos, Elena managed to turn. Her eyes were wide, burning with courage, and she looked at Samuel in a way that said more than words ever could. "I'll fight too." And she did. Grabbing a large stone, she hurled it with all her strength, striking one of the attackers. He staggered back, stunned. But there were more, always more. And then Samuel realized something that froze him to the core. One of them knew far too much about Elena, every gesture, every move. seemed to anticipate what she would do next. This wasn't just hatred. It was knowledge, intimacy, betrayal. "They know everything about you," Samuel said between shots, his voice tight. "Who did this to you?" Elena dodged, breathing hard, every muscle rigid. "I can't say not yet. But if they find out you're helping me—" She swallowed. "You may regret ever stopping." Samuel clenched his jaw. The West taught that no one survives alone. But that woman, fragile and yet fierce, was stirring something inside him he hadn't felt in years. Hope and the instinct to protect. The canyon echoed with gunfire, rolling stones, horses screaming, and the wind slicing through the sounds of battle. Every movement was calculated, every second a matter of life or death. And just as it seemed they might escape, an unexpected figure blocked the path ahead. Samuel realized, cold with dread, that the true threat hadn't even appeared yet. The West never made anything easy, and for Elena, the past was about to catch up with her, with all its fury. The canyon remained silent, but the tension hung in the air like smoke from a fire about to explode. Samuel held Elena firmly, breathing fast, every muscle on alert. They had escaped the first ambush, but the danger was still there, invisible, circling every shadow. "Samuel," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. I need to tell you something." He kept his gaze steady. "This isn't the time for secrets, but I'll listen, whatever it is." She took a deep breath, staring at the dry ground before lifting her eyes. "Before I got here, I saw my brother being taken. I couldn't save him, and that was my fault." Samuel felt the weight of her words. The West taught survival, but nothing prepared a man to carry guilt that eats away from the inside. She was wounded, yes, but the pain she carried came from deeper within, deeper than any bullet or blade. "Who did this to him?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Who dared to hurt him?" Elena looked away, swallowing hard. "People I trusted, those who were supposed to protect our family, but they became my enemies, and now they're coming for me." Samuel tightened his grip on the reins, his heart racing. This wasn't just an ordinary chase. It was personal, calculated, relentless. Every move, every ambush was meant to hurt Elena and break anyone who tried to protect her. They pressed on along the narrow trail, and once again Samuel felt eyes following them. This time the danger felt closer, more human, more intentional. He looked at Elena and saw not only fear, but the quiet strength that kept her standing. "I know you trust me," Samuel said firmly, "but we need to reach a safe place before they catch us again." Elena nodded, but there was something in her eyes he couldn't ignore, a mix of hope and determination, and the promise that she wasn't telling everything yet. Her story hid something far more dangerous than Samuel could imagine. As they rode through the canyon, a new sound cut through the wind, light, precise footsteps. Someone running in the distance. Samuel knew instantly this was no longer a random ambush. They had sent someone to track them, to watch their movements. And in that moment, Samuel realized the West offered no mercy. But he also knew that, at least for now, he wouldn't let Elena face this alone. Elena's past was closing in, and Samuel understood that the next ambush wouldn't just test skill. It would test courage, trust, and survival. The sun was beginning to set, staining the desert in shades of orange and red. Samuel held the reins tightly, muscles tense, eyes alert to every shadow. Elena rode beside him, exhausted, yet carrying a silent determination that surprised him. Each of her breaths felt as heavy as any bullet they might face. "Samuel," Elena whispered, her voice weak, but steady. They know exactly where we're going." He didn't answer right away. The instincts of the West screamed for fast action, but there was something else. The danger wasn't just physical. It was calculated, personal. Samuel realized that every step they took was being anticipated. The trap was closing in. Then suddenly, from the top of a hill, shadows appeared. 3 men, silent, emerging as if the earth itself had swallowed them and spat them back out at that precise moment. Samuel understood then, this wasn't an ordinary pursuit. It was a carefully planned ambush, executed with precision, as if they knew there would be no escape. "Hold on to me," Samuel said, pulling Elena down closer to the saddle. "We're not letting them catch us. Elena clung tightly, and something in her eyes revealed more than fear. She was ready to fight, even exhausted. Samuel drew his gun, fingers steady, every muscle rigid. He knew every second mattered, that a single mistake could cost them their lives. The men advanced, pistols gleaming in the light of the setting sun. Samuel fired, but one of them moved too fast. In an instinctive motion, Elena grabbed a stone and struck the man. He staggered back, startled. Samuel felt a rush of relief and surprise. She wasn't just a victim. She had strength, and he needed that. Then came the shock. One of them ducked behind a rock and fired with deadly precision. The shot ricocheted, and Samuel felt the impact of something narrowly missing Elena. His heart raced, not just from the danger, but from a cruel realization. They knew exactly how to hurt her. And perhaps Samuel himself had been a target for a long time, without ever realizing it. "We have to get out of here, now!" he shouted, yanking the reins with all his strength. The horse surged forward, climbing a steep trail. Each rock seemed ready to knock Elena loose, but she held on, with a silent determination that burned inside him. As they vanished into the canyon, Samuel noticed something that made his breath catch. One of the pursuers stopped for a moment and smiled. It wasn't just hatred, it was recognition. They knew Elena deeply, and worse than that, they knew the weakness of anyone who tried to help her. And in that instant, Samuel understood the gravity of their situation. "They won't stop," he said, breathless, his voice thick with tension. And the worst part, this is only the beginning. The desert was no longer just a setting. It was a battlefield, a place where every step, every decision could mean life or death. And Samuel knew that if he wanted to protect her, he would have to face not only those men, but the secrets she carried and the dangers still waiting ahead. Night fell over the desert like a heavy cloak. The cold wind swept across the trail, lifting sand that burned the skin and the eyes. Samuel and Elena were exhausted, but they couldn't stop. Each step of the horse carried them closer to something Samuel still didn't fully understand. Elena's past was about to be revealed, and he knew it would change everything. "Samuel," Elena began, her voice trembling, yet steady. I never told you everything, but now there's no time." He kept his eyes on her, alert for any sign of danger, but ready to listen. "Say it, now's the time." Elena took a deep breath, swallowing the fear that burned in her chest. "Before all this, before I reached the desert, my father made the wrong deals. Things that should have stayed hidden, but someone found out, and they killed my brother to force me to give them information. I didn't know where to run. I didn't know who to trust." Samuel felt the world shake around him. He had always known the West hid secrets, but this one could cost not only Elena's life, but his as well. "They want me dead," she continued, her eyes shining in the dim light, "and they won't stop hunting me until they succeed." Before Samuel could react, a sound sliced through the darkness. Fast, precise footsteps, coming from the shadows of the rocks. He raised his weapon, feeling the tension rise like never before. "Samuel!" Elena whispered, gripping his hand tightly. "They're here." 3 figures emerged from the darkness, and Samuel realized something that made his blood run cold. They weren't just ordinary pursuers. One of them carried a badge, a symbol of authority. But the cruelty in his eyes was unmistakable. They weren't seeking justice. They were seeking revenge. "It's now or never," Samuel murmured, his voice heavy with determination. "Get ready." Elena nodded, breathing deeply. For the first time, Samuel saw in her not only fear, but a strength that defied every threat. She had been hunted, betrayed, and now she was ready to fight. Beside him until the end, the gunfire erupted. The night exploded with echoes of gunpowder, shouts, and rolling stones. Samuel moved with precision, shielding Elena, while she reacted instinctively, taking down one of the attackers with a courage and agility that surprised even him. And in the middle of the chaos, Samuel realized the truth. Protecting Elena was not just about survival. It was about justice, redemption, and trust. The desert was not only deadly, it was a test of courage and loyalty. As the fight continued, Elena cast a look at Samuel, silent, saying more than any words ever could. "I trust you." And in that moment, Samuel knew they wouldn't just face the men before them. They would face the past, the secrets, and the fear that had haunted them for years. The desert fell silent for a brief moment, but Samuel knew the final chapter was about to begin. Dawn slowly burned on the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. The cold of the night still lingered, but the tension hanging over Samuel and Elena was even stronger. They had survived the ambush of the previous night, but now they knew exactly who they were facing. Powerful men, driven by vengeance, tied to the dark past Elena carried. "Samuel, we need to end this," Elena said, her voice steady, yet echoing with fear and determination. "I can't keep running." He took her hand, feeling the strength she carried within. "Then we face it together. But we need a plan. This has to end, once and for all." The plan was simple, but dangerous. Samuel knew he would have to use every bit of his knowledge of the desert, every skill he had as a rancher, to turn the tide. They moved along a narrow trail, hidden behind rocks and cacti, every step calculated, every breath controlled. And then they appeared. The men who had hunted Elena for weeks were waiting at the top of a hill. Confident, one of them, the one wearing the badge, laughed, as if victory were already his. "You thought you could run?" he shouted. "She won't escape." Samuel pulled Elena down, his fingers tight around the grip of his weapon. "Now, Elena," he said, his voice low, intense. "Trust me." She nodded. For the first time there was no fear, only courage. The confrontation began. Gunshots echoed through the canyon, stones tumbling, horses neighing, the wind slicing through the noise of battle. But this time, Samuel and Elena had something their enemies didn't: unity and determination. Every move Samuel made protected Elena. Every reaction from her struck back at their enemies, combining strength with intelligence. In a crucial moment, Elena managed to disarm the man with the badge, proving not only her bravery, but that she was no victim. She was part of the solution. Samuel charged forward, taking down the last pursuer as he tried to hide. And when silence finally settled over the canyon, the danger was over. Samuel turned to Elena, breathing heavily, his eyes locked onto hers. "It's over," she smiled, a mix of relief and gratitude lighting her tired, dust-covered face. "Yes, it's over." The desert, once a witness to fear, pursuit, and pain, now watched something different unfold. Life, hope, and a new beginning. Samuel extended his hand, helping Elena down from the horse, and they walked together along the trail, side by side, gazing toward the open horizon ahead. "And your past?" he asked carefully. "It's still there," Elena replied firmly. "But now I know I don't have to face it alone. And you gave me something I never thought I'd have again: trust." Samuel smiled, squeezing her hand. "And you gave me courage too." The sun kept rising, burning away the dust and the remnants of battle, revealing a clean, silent desert, as if it had witnessed not just a physical victory, but an emotional one. They had survived. They had won. In the West, danger never truly disappears, but on that day, on that trail, justice had been done, and love, silent, unexpected, was born from the ashes of the pursuit. The desert kept its scars, but now it also held a promise. They were ready to write a new chapter of their lives. And for the first time, they could look toward the future without fear. And so, Samuel and Elena continued through the desert, no longer as hunter and hunted, but as partners, bound by what they faced, what they survived, and what they chose to build together. In the West, danger never truly disappears, but on that day, on that trail, justice had been done, and love, silent, unexpected, was born from the ashes of the pursuit. The desert kept its scars, but now it also held a promise. They were ready to write a new chapter of their lives.